Welcome to Let's Take a Walk, brought to you by the Feld Group Institute. Today we dive into the evolving world of cybersecurity with George Finney, renowned author, speaker, and zero trust expert. George walks us through the foundations of zero trust security, why it's more than just a tool or architecture, and how it can transform the way organizations defend against threats. We also explore timely challenges at the intersection of AI and security, from safeguarding legacy systems to navigating the risks of AI agents and data trust. This conversation will give you practical insights, strategies, and stories to better protect your organization in an age of rapid change.
So I met George in 2001, 2002, when we hired him to become the director of network operations for a startup that I was the CTO of. We were bringing and commercializing voice over IP, so converged service offering of voice over IP in the halcyon days of digitization of voice. And as a result, George and I spent a lot of hours in a screen room in the Infomart in Dallas trying to get the service running, all that bleeding edge technology we had to deal with. And I learned when I met George a couple of things right away. First, immensely talented, very smart, knew his domain, immensely curious. And he also had an eclectic set of interests that went way beyond his day job, and some of those are in evidence, I think, behind him. Fast forward to today, George is now the Chief Information Security Officer for the University of Texas System, Texas being a very large state. So George has a very expansive set of responsibilities professionally, but George has also, through his career, has also excelled as a communicator, right? So he's also an author, a best-selling author of cybersecurity books. His most recent, The Rise of Machines, is a great narrative on the intersection between security and AI. Prior to that, Project Zero Trust, which has been material to me in some of the work that I've done over the last 5 years in particular, around cyber network, full app stacks, that kind of stuff. And then the Book of the Year award-winning Well Aware, which really was establishing patterns for successful practice of cybersecurity habits. In 2024, George was the recipient of the Baldrige Foundation Leadership Award for Cybersecurity. He was recognized in 2023 as one of the top 100 CISOs in the world. And he's worked in cybersecurity through his entire career. He and I actually, in some of our earliest days, dealt with some very early machine takeovers that we had to deal with, as I remember George. So he's been around this topic for a long time, and he's helped startups, global telecommunications firms, and nonprofits improve their security posture, in addition to the work that he does in his day responsibilities. So that's George Finney.
Yeah, thanks, Jared. George, welcome. I know you're going to have a chance to introduce yourself a little bit too, and have a deck here that I'll talk about in a minute. But just one quick note, program note. At the bottom of the hour, so we're going to reward people hanging in there. At the bottom of the hour, we're going to have a little special offer. So stay tuned for that. We'll take a little quick break from the conversation, and just so George and I are going to have a conversation here about his thinking about zero trust, cybersecurity, AI especially, and we'll do that. But George, I think you had mentioned, and I think this is a great idea, just to establish some shared mental models and common language, just a foundation for us to go forward in this thing. So if you can share those slides and go ahead and share them, and you'll do a quick thing, and then we'll have a conversation about it. So George, take it away.
Well, howdy, y'all. Thank y'all so much for that great introduction. I'm just honored to be here to talk to y'all today about my favorite subject, cybersecurity. So I just happen to be really close friends with the gentleman who created Zero Trust. He coined the term back in 2010. His name was John Kindervag, if y'all have ever met him. Just I think a national treasure. And getting to know him over the years, y'all probably have heard a little bit about Zero Trust in some context. One of the amazing things that John did while he was at Forrester Research is they didn't put Zero Trust behind a paywall. They never copyrighted it, so it really grew beyond what they could have done on its own. But one of the things that happened because of that is every marketing company at every technology firm has co-opted the term, and it's kind of gotten muddled a little bit. So I want to start with just the definition of zero trust. And the definition is pretty simple. It's a strategy. It's a strategy for preventing or containing cybersecurity breaches by removing the trust relationships that we have in digital systems. Note that it doesn't say we don't trust people. I think that's actually the most important part of cybersecurity is building a team around you, not just of security folks, but of IT leaders, of executives, to get us all on the same page, moving in the same direction. That's really what a strategy is for. Um, and I think the other thing that y'all probably have already picked up from the definition is that it's not a tool. It's not something you can just go buy. And also, I want to quibble a little bit with some of the marketing stuff out there. You've probably heard Zero Trust referred to as an architecture. While I think the NIST standard for Zero Trust does talk a lot about architecture in terms of the practice, what we'll talk about today goes a little bit beyond just architecture. Um, so JR helpfully mentioned a couple of the books that I've written. These are the two that are specifically about Zero Trust. Project Zero Trust just a couple of months ago was inducted into the Cybersecurity Hall of Fame, which I'm just incredibly blown away by. And I think part of the reason that these two books have done so well already is just because very similar to y'all have probably heard of or have read the Phoenix Project by Gene Kim. It tells a story. Um, and the reason that I thought it was so compelling to tell a story is that you get to see what zero trust means and how to approach it from the perspectives of all of the unique characters in the book, from the CEO to the help desk to network engineers and identity teams. So I think it really gives a much bigger picture. And that's one of the challenges that we face today in security is everything that we do has become so siloed. It's hard to really connect the dots sometimes. So that is part of why I wrote the books the way that I did. Um, a lot of folks when I've done talks around the world about zero trust talk about frameworks. They talk about things like the NIST cybersecurity framework, which is a phenomenal framework, by the way. I think it really does help you understand whether you've had a complete program. But I compare a framework to what you're looking at. Bonus points to anybody who can identify this particular aircraft. Um, but just looking at this cross section, you can already start to see the major components of the aircraft, right? You see propulsion, you can kind of see navigation and communication, and that's really what the NIST framework for cybersecurity is about. It's about understanding whether you have a complete airplane to make sure you've got all the parts covered. Um, but there's something missing from that. And I think, going back to something I said a little earlier, the thing that you don't see in this picture are the people, right? You don't see the pilot. You don't see the maintenance staff in this picture. And that, again, I think the most important part of cybersecurity are the humans. They're the ones, with the aircraft analogy to take it a little further. How you fly a plane if you're a pilot is very different if you're in a commercial airliner versus a fighter jet. Um, how you maintain an aircraft is varies if you're maintaining a prop-driven airplane versus a rocket. They're very different approaches, and I think there is no one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to cybersecurity. Every organization is different, every industry is different. We use different tools, we have different risk appetites, and that's where zero trust kind of leads in, and why we've approached zero trust the way we have. So back in 2010, John Kindervag, while he was at Forrester Research, coined the term zero trust, and he wrote a paper called "No More Chewy Centers." So still available online. You can Google "No More Chewy Centers." I don't think you have to pay for it. You can download it from Palo Alto Networks site. But these were the first four principles of zero trust, and he called it "No More Chewy Centers." So, like an M&M, right? You've got the crunchy
Right.
candy shell, and
Yeah.
then the idea is very similar to security, right? We had these perimeters with firewalls and whatnot to make it hard on the outside, but it was still chewy on in the center. Um, and the bad guys were really good at getting in through VPN or other means to find that chewy center. So with zero trust, we're really making jawbreakers, right? That's kind of the idea. Um,
I like it.
and we've talked so much in security over the last decade about focusing on the business, right? Aligning with the business. That was baked into zero trust from day one. Designing from the inside out. You've probably heard the term microsegmentation or maybe deperimeterization. Those are kind of synonymous with that pillar of zero trust. Identity is another core component of zero trust. So understanding who or what needs access and assigning privileges. Um, and the fourth one, inspecting and logging all traffic, was really a challenge in 2010 in terms of volume of storage and processing. But the hardest question I've gotten asked as a CISO is what happened when I don't have the logs to be able to go back and answer that question? I can't be proactive to prevent new things from happening unless I'm proactively going through those logs and figuring out why things are the way they are. So this is where zero trust started in 2010. Um, and the great thing about Kindervag, he has consulted for thousands of organizations all over the world. And he didn't want to just come in like another consultant and just say, okay, cool, you had me here for a week or two. Now I'm done. See you later. He wanted a sustainable methodology that organizations could use to make zero trust continue within their organizations. And so really the core component of this is the protect surface. Um, you might have heard if you've talked to security folks about something called an attack surface. Um, in security, we don't control the attack surface. So I think back to the Peloton breach a few years ago. They were able to exfiltrate data through an API in the mobile app. Um, I mean, every smartphone in the world could potentially be a part of your attack surface. So instead, we focus on what we can control in a protect surface. We group like assets together. And again, this is part of that idea of containing the blast radius of an incident. Um, you've got to understand how your applications work, what network traffic, what application services are running in order to be able to protect it. And that is sometimes a challenge because documentation isn't where we need it to be. Um, and that leads in finally to architecture, right? Architecture is one component of zero trust, but it's not the only one. So mapping the right controls in the right places is incredibly important. And I think again, I've been guilty of this in my own CISO career. You don't necessarily need all controls in all places. So from a cost efficiency perspective, zero trust, because it focuses on prevention, we know an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Zero trust really, as a strategy, is the most effective way we have today of protecting our organizations, but because it focuses on the most efficient ways of protecting things. Um, Zero trust policies are incredibly important. Again, identity is cool. Again, I think that's one of the core components. But today, I come from a network background, as JR kind of mentioned. But when I think of policies, I think of firewall policies. But today, your antivirus has policies. Your identity systems have policies. Your developers might be pushing policy as code to containerized applications. So you've got to have an interdisciplinary group brought together to be able to kind of coordinate all of those things and make sure that all of your controls are working in conjunction. And the final step is monitoring that. Usually that's with the Security Operations Center. Um, but there's that feedback loop from the SOC. They're not just monitoring for issues. Ideally, they're doing threat hunting. They're proactively looking for issues. Maybe you're doing tabletop exercises or penetration testing to feedback in. Did we do a good enough job protecting our protect surface? Did we capture all the transaction flows? Um, are we monitoring for new attacks and new techniques? We're going to continually evolve as our organization evolves or as attackers evolve. In terms of process, we like to start with things that won't make an impact to the organization if we take them offline as we're learning to do zero trust, right? Again, you've brought that interdisciplinary group together to work on each protect surface. You quickly moved your crown jewels because those are the most important things to protect, and move on from there. Um, some zero trust journeys might last, uh, you know, 3, 4, 5 years, depending on your organization's maturity. But you want to be able to show progress quickly, and this protect surface approach really makes that difference. One of the challenges with helping train non-security folks is just being able to spot the trusts, right? So I've seen it a ton of times where an admin of some kind gives them give themselves direct access to your cloud environments from their PC or from their desktop at work. Um, Nailing up that persistent connection is a trust. So where these different columns and rows intersect are typically where the trusts are found, and we want to be able to bring that out of folks. And then there's a maturity model. This is the one that Kindervog created. CISA has the federal government's cybersecurity and infrastructure security agency has their own zero trust maturity assessment. But note, again, this is the typical maturity model on the top. Um, but each step in the methodology has its own level of maturity. So you can tune that maturity model back to where you need to be as an organization, again, focusing on your biggest risk. So I'm going to pause there. That's my slide deck, John.
Okay,
Um,
great. Yeah.
uh,
Thanks.
yeah, so let me stop
No, I think
sharing.
yeah, I think it's helpful. We just, not everyone on this call is in the same place on what this is and things like that. And you have very few CISOs on the call here. So a lot of other people that really care about this, maybe know something about it, maybe know a lot about it, but I think that's a great level set and appreciate that. Let's start a little bit with your books. Okay, so the two books that you wrote that are narrative stories, that are novels, you touched on a little bit of why you wrote them, but talk a little bit about why that story matters. I'm really struck by the people aspect of this thing. We talk a lot about how there's blind spots in an organization, right? People come from different perspectives. They kind of know what they know. They care about what they care about. And they do care somewhat about the company, but their view is limited. And so I think the idea of eliminating blind spots has a few different meanings in this context, right? Some of it's organizational, some of it's about systems and chewy insides and things like that. But sort of why did you write these as maybe tell us a little bit about the story? I mean, what would be
Yeah.
what's the little bit the book summary and the company March Fit is kind of an interesting company. And then
Yeah. So,
curious
okay.
about the feedback you've gotten about that approach. Right?
So the story, the main character, Dylan, wakes up. It's his first day at his new company, March Fit. I kind of sat down with Kindervog over a weekend and workshop some of the different kinds of companies. Right, we wanted to create a company that would have enough technical requirements to kind of be able to bridge any industry. Right, I didn't want to just have a company that did banking or finance or healthcare, because those are really specific use cases. We wanted to be general enough, have a little bit of app development, a good customer base. It's more of a startup kind of approach. Um, But Dylan wakes up on day one. He's about to start work for his company. He's got one of their treadmills, and notices it's not working. And then when he goes into the office, they've been ransomed. So the response to the ransomware, again, you get to see the conversations at a CEO level, at a CIO level, and they know they need to do something differently. That's when they start adopting zero trust. They bring in the zero trust guru. John didn't want me to use him in the book, so I created a character. There's a lot of pop culture references in the book, as you might imagine from my background behind me. The consultant's name is actually the same character name as Seth Rogen's character in the interview, which it was what precipitated the Sony breach back in 2015. So there's a lot of little
Yeah.
Easter eggs in there that are fun. And I think one of the reactions, I think the most common reaction to the book is, oh my gosh, security is so scary. I think it's so technical. People don't know how to approach it. And we're telling about the big picture of security. We're helping people connect the dots, but we're also showing them kind of in an optimistic way that doing security is possible. It doesn't have to be a whole a huge expense. I think it's about something you do every day. And March Fit, again, they make treadmills. But the motto for the company is every step matters, and I think that really fits with zero trust, right? We need to
Right.
be making steady progress all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great. One of the reactions I had to the book. So just for you guys, I want to highlight something George just said. The first day of the book, there's an incident, right? There's a breach and ransomware and a breach, and they've got some data and things like that. So it gets everyone's attention. And one of the things about the book that's great, George, I think, is you show, like you said, from the perspective of the CEO, the technical folks, the people that have been trying to do cybersecurity but maybe haven't gotten the attention. There's all kinds of different characters in this thing. Finance is there, marketing's there, things like that. So, and the cool thing about the company and what they do to rally is that they're all working together. They're all paying attention. They're all learning about this stuff and care about it. One thing that I wanted to ask you is, how do you rally? What are some ways to rally that kind of attention and engagement, that kind of empathy and understanding, the elimination of blind spots, the motivation before a breach? I mean, you'd much rather do it when you don't, it's kind of like, do you want to eat healthy or do you want to wait till you had a heart attack and then say, okay, now I better eat healthy and, take my aspirin and go on walks? I mean, it's better as prevention, as you said. So how could you get that kind of engagement prior to something bad happening?
Yeah, I think this is one of the critical issues that we face in cybersecurity is, I mean, obviously, one of my mentors over the years said, never waste a good crisis. So, that's, I think, where a lot of folks come in to improve their security. But, I think building trust starts with starts with your security team, right? I think if as a lot of security leaders have taken the approach of they're the office of no, you have to do it this way, you can't do those things. I think there was a question in the chat about how do you balance between security and the business. There has to be an ongoing conversation, and I think security leaders have to go more than halfway to meet the business leaders or the CIO or CTO or different technical teams where they're at. And the narrative for the book, they know they're doing a product launch in essentially 6 months. So they have to work within those constraints and find ways to be successful. There are financial conversations with the CFO or other leaders of the company. We can't do these things. We can't buy a new tool. So how do we have that conversation? In my own practice, I've been with the University of Texas now as the system-wide CISO. for a little over a year. And what I did coming in to do zero trust at an organization with 140,000 employees, I started with education. So we offered free zero trust certification training to not just security team members, but to all IT team members across the system. And I think so far in the first year, we've got over 20% of our security team members with that educational background. I think doing that level set starts to help ease the concerns about doing zero trust. It's not it's not something that has to be painful. And getting that leadership buy-in, knowing that you are going to work with them. I think there are incremental steps you can do as you're launching new initiatives, or as you're going into to different seasons. You're taking those things into account.
I'm gonna just ask one other thing. Just this may be a kind of a rough way to think about it, but what about just scaring people? What do you think of that? Just scaring them, like here's what could happen. Here's what did happen here. Here's what, do you think that's a good approach, or do you think that brings people's resistance up?
So I would say, you need a complete toolkit. And I don't like scaring people. That's not who I am. That doesn't lend itself
You
to
don't seem
me
scary.
personally. But no, I mean, I think it is a valuable tool. So in one of the early books I looked at in Well Aware, we looked at how habits work. So I worked with different psychologists to ask these kinds of questions. And fear is a great tool for getting people to not do things, to avoid bad things. And like touching a hot stove, that makes sense, but it also shuts people down cognitively. So if what you need
Mhm.
to get them to do is new things, proactive things, fear is not going to be the best tool in your toolkit to be able to accomplish those things. So I think fear will get you so far, right? It might help you get a little bit of budget, but it also starts to break down those relationships over time, and you want to avoid that, I think, as much as possible. Where again, you need folks to be proactive.
Right.
I think if you were a coach, right, one of the ways that I've evolved as a CISO is to think of myself like a coach. I've studied the great coaches in almost every discipline. They want to start with your strengths, not paper over all your weaknesses, which is what we're doing in security. We're focused on you're doing all of these things wrong. Instead, if we can start to say, okay, look, you're already doing these things great. Let me help build you up on that, feel like that they're a part of the security team, and then kind of slowly change the culture and work in other important security behaviors or aspects. I think that really can help with that, again, that proactive mindset, so that you're doing things before that there's a breach versus after.
I've been through a lot of different technology revolutions, or you call them evolution, things like that. Charlie talks about this all the time. It's a great, perspective on the history of it, and the mainframe era, the internet, mobility, IoT, AI. So kind of what's special about this, and what's the same about this as a new trend? And then how are you thinking about cyber and AI? Is it using AI to help with cybersecurity, using, cybersecurity being challenged in different ways because of AI? Just
Yeah.
kind of share some of your thoughts, and I'll jump in a little bit. Let's go about 10 minutes on this topic before we open it up for more questions and comments.
Yeah, so I think one of the challenges to overcome with AI is, there's the general sci-fi idea that any sufficiently advanced technology is effectively magic, right? And I think a lot of folks think of AI as being magic. It's not magic. In terms of how AI works, just very quickly, we use an analogy in the book AI works exactly like a restaurant. Um, when you think about a restaurant, how it works, everybody can already kind of instinctively know how a restaurant works. The ingredients come in the loading dock, just like data is the underpinning of all AI. You have to clean and prep your ingredients, just like you have to clean and normalize the data. You have a recipe, whatever kind of restaurant you're going to start. Those are the models, right? You might create your own recipe, But more often than not, you're starting with an existing model and you're using other folks' models to build upon. You have tools in AI, just like you have ovens and grills or microwaves in your restaurant. And often the types of tools you have will determine the kind of restaurant you are, whether you're a dive bar or a
Mhm.
four-star Michelin restaurant. So the final part, every restaurant has a dining room. Generally, you want to keep the customers out of the kitchen. Um, that's
Yeah.
again the same with AI. There's some sort of user interface. You want to separate that out from the back end. But okay, so to your point, why is AI different? How is that different from, or is it from any other technology? And I think the answer that is that it is different in one key area. In almost every other technology that we've ever developed, there's this concept of a control plane and a data plane. So when you think about how HTML works, for example, we separate out the control code from the data code, right? And the whole idea of that is security. With AI 100% trusts all of the data natively that it's trained upon. AI 100% trusts all of the user interactions, and in fact, the user interactions contain both the data itself as well as the control. So we have to think about AI differently when it comes to security because it is fundamentally different.
Yeah.
I,
Okay.
I like to argue that because AI is 100% trust, really the only way of securing it is through zero trust. So, but the good news is
Oh, interesting.
the attackers are already. So if you think about the restaurant analogy, you can poison ingredients, you can change, get trick the people the chefs into changing the recipe. You can attack the ovens, make sure it doesn't meet code, right? All of those things attackers are already doing today for every part of that restaurant analogy. They're stealing your ingredients, they're stealing your recipes. Um, but it's a very similar problem that we had about 15 years ago when we started moving en masse into the cloud. We lost a lot of visibility from security teams' perspectives, and it took
Right.
years to really get from a security perspective the maturity that we had for on-prem services. And the good news with AI is that there are already some of those tools in place, controls to wrap around AI. So with many AI systems, there are these things called guardrails built in. Um, but you can't just use those guardrails. Some organizations have chosen to, you've heard of a firewall or maybe a web application firewall. They have AI or LLM firewalls now that you can put between your end users and the back end LLM itself, for example. So those are really important to think about. But again, we're not thinking about it in a vacuum, right? You've already got a security program in place. You already know how to secure your development cycle, right? That's a very similar process to securing your model development process. We already know how to secure data. Maybe you're storing your data in an LLM in blob storage while you're doing the training process. We already know how to do those things really well. But I think operationalizing those tasks, right? Taking feeds from the guardrails, making sure that's being visible by your security operations team. That is how you get better because you probably seen a lot of the fear out there about, oh well, somebody can trick my AI into to releasing data. That is true. Those things are happening. However, what the researchers are doing is they're iterating. They're spending weeks or potentially months to craft the prompts to be able to exfiltrate that data. But if in your day-to-day security practice, if I see one anomaly that's a problem, I'm starting to block those IP addresses. Maybe I'm assuming that user account has been compromised and I'm forcing them to re-authenticate. Maybe I'm changing what they can have access to based on the activity I'm seeing. So operationalizing all those security controls into your existing security program is something that we should be able to do. And I think that helps at least from my perspective, with the fear kind of based security selling cycle, that
Right.
okay, well, cool, I have these controls, and those controls can mitigate whatever new headline grabbing vulnerability is out there with
Yeah,
AI.
in a way, you can use your own form of AI and machines learning to identify those little things that might lead up to the ultimate attack or stealing of the data.
Exactly. And again, so that's security for AI. On the flip side, there are great new AI tools. So Microsoft has they call it Copilot for security. So
Mhm.
they have an AI model very similar to an LLM that will review all of your Microsoft security logs, whether it's in Microsoft Defender or Sentinel or Active Directory or what have you. And it acts as essentially a tier one SOC analyst. So we've got some of our student workers who don't have a background in security, but it's making them more effective and helping them be a lot more like tier two or tier three analysts right away. All of those prompts are rewritten, so an investigation that might have taken hours or days in some cases, they get responses back in seconds, and can really kind of compete with the bad guys who are also using AI to automate their attacks. It helps us be
Right.
able to respond in real time.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. One of the nice things about the book, the Zero Project Zero Trust book, is these leaders rally around. I mean, the leaders, the CEO, the head of legal, the head of HR, they're all in this and they understand it, and so it filters down through the organization. And I think the trick, as we talked about, is how to get their attention without a big event. But if you can get their attention anyway, before or after, I think that's a key to
The
start.
thing that I've seen and I worry about a lot is the quality of the architecture, of the legacy, of not updating, uh, legacy operating systems of, I mean, big gaping holes that are not being tended to for this day and age, for companies to still have 40, 50-year-old systems that don't have documentation, that don't have people that even know what's going on inside of them. How do you get people's attention for that? Because the few big ones I've seen have been caused by back releases and security holes in operating systems, right? I'm not talking about the sophisticated, geopolitical stuff. I'm just talking about people that can break into you because you haven't made the case as a CIO to improve the architecture, shut down the legacy, retire a bunch of stuff that has so many holes in it. Is there a good case study for that anywhere? I mean, it falls in the category of scaring people, but it's real scary for me to think about code that I don't even understand, systems that aren't even supported anymore, right? Hardware, things that are easy to break into.
That really hits home for me, Charlie, because one of my main institutions still has a mainframe today, and I mean, we're coming up with plans to migrate away, but it's a $100+ million initiative to move away from that, right? Um, and so I think the big case study is really Maersk. If y'all recall, several years the shipping giant, there's a great article out there on Wired, I think from gosh, 2018, 2019. And so there was a long story. So the NSA lost its cybersecurity toolkit. That they were compromised, and they have a whole volume, a whole library of 0 days available to them. One of the 0 days when that breach of the NSA happened was adopted by Russian attackers, and one of the hallmarks of the way our Russian adversaries like to do things is, with U.S. operations, typically it's very targeted, and there's no blowback. right? We target our operations to minimize any external damage. However, the Russians kind of take pride in the additional damage that they seem to cause. So this was again they used the Eternal Blue toolkit to target Ukraine, um, but it took down basically all of Maersk. I mean, it was a great case study. And their CEO, there's some videos of him on YouTube talking about how his perspective changed before that incident and how he felt about technology versus after that incident and how they invest in technology. And I mean, again, reading the Wired story is a phenomenal experience because they were literally saved by one of their Active Directory servers was in, somewhere in Africa, and it had a dial-up connection, and they had to call them and say, "Don't connect to the dial-up, leave it offline, because if you connect it, it's going to be taken down." And that was really the only way they were able to recover all of their systems, is by flying a guy out there, picking up that computer, flying him back, and doing restores that way, right? The resiliency of that organization hinged essentially on a dial-up connection. If they had a better internet connection in that remote location, they may not have recovered. So I think again, that perspective shift of how we think about technology. Technology is the business today for every organization out there, that really is our lifeblood. That really hits home for me.
Is that usually the just quick answer? Maybe it's both. I don't know. Is that usually the hard shell outside or the chewy inside? Is that the entry point? These old legacy systems, poorly maintained or not upgraded operating systems, things like that. Is that the way in, or is that the once you're in, that's the way to chew through the middle?
It's both. I don't think there's a single answer for that, right? The bad guys are great at finding open VPNs. On a single compromised account can get you, even if you don't compromise the VPN, you can get in. And typically, the way folks have VPNs configured is they have access to everything on the inside once they're in. I mean, compromising account is trivial these days. Um, there are also a lot of cases where those legacy accounts or legacy services or servers or what have you aren't patched, and they're open on the public internet. They're not even protected
Mhm.
by a firewall, and they've gotten bad attackers have gotten in that way as well. So the bad guys are just very good at exploiting lots of different angles to get in to compromise folks.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a question about what agentic AI is going to do to that scenario. If we assume that agents are going to sit somewhere between the human and the application layer, or take over more of the human things that used to be done, um, we have a way to secure applications today. We've been doing that for years, decades, right? The applications have identities that can be authenticated and authorized to do things or not. Is that enough? Is that the same approach we should be using towards agents? Do they need, I'm assuming they do need to have their identities that need to be authorized and authenticated. But is that enough? Is there something going on in AI, specifically agentic AI, that requires like does it mandate we have to do zero trust now, or how does it change the landscape compared to what we've been doing with that application layer in the past?
I love this question, Russell, because this is probably the number one issue with AI that keeps me up at night still. So for those folks who aren't as familiar with agentic AI, right? So it's really about taking an LLM or taking AI and doing stuff with it, right? Having scripts or what have you, taking action on behalf of a user. So when I think about this issue, right, that is we cover this issue extensively in the new book Rise of the Machines. But I'm super concerned because today I can't tell the difference between an agent acting on a user's behalf and the actual user's behavior. And in some cases, right, with a user, I might force a reauthentication, but with some of these agents, we've given them tokens so that their access is good forever. And I think again, this is going to take a lot of maturation of our security programs in order for us to be able to tell the difference um, and lock down our environments around agents. So yeah, I think this is a really tough issue for us. And I think the more mature programs are probably ready for that, but there's still probably a lot of low-hanging fruit for others that are maybe earlier on in their zero trust journey. But I mean, I think, again, to your point, the way agents can be compromised, it's going to be really easy. Again, an attacker compromises your user accounts, and can use those agents to really expand rapidly in an organization. So one of our institutions had a single machine compromised by a user's clicking on a link essentially. Within essentially 2 hours, we saw those attackers. I mean, we had good security controls in place, but they would have touched 2,500 devices within the course of 2 hours. That's the power of AI. So when you think of having access to data, I mean, where maybe 5 years ago the attackers were dwelling inside your systems for 6 months or a year before they were able to exfiltrate data. Now we're really talking about hours or minutes for them to use these AI tools to be able to exfiltrate data and have an impact to the organization or take actions to further impact the organization, whether those agents are, again, just scripts or whether that's, an agent inside your Salesforce application that's kind of baked in. It's a really challenging process to work through. And I think, again, identity is one of the cornerstones of zero trust, but there's a lot of maturity you have to get to before you can separate out the agents from the humans.
I think
Yeah,
Agree that we don't yet know if our historical approaches are going to be adequate for agents or not.
Yeah, totally.
I do think that from a governance perspective, though, there's a twist that for agentic AI, we will need to have humans involved in the governance of what those agents can do. And that's going to have to be the guardrail, I guess, until we can find a better technical approach to managing what they can do and what they can't do.
yeah. Here's the challenge, though, right? Today, what we're using agents for a lot of time is the toil that humans don't want to do, right? So think about the software supply chain, and we're having agents do DevOps actions on broad code bases. That gives them universal access to a code base, right? Unsupervised, right? So unless you're really vigilant before you do commits to a code line, and these exploits are already starting to show up where malactors are injecting bad the ability to inject bad code into code bases now, right, through Hugging Face's submissions, Russell, right, for llama based models. Like, those things are showing up already, and we're just giving them the keys. Like, your long-lived security token, George, kind of was like a whoa, that's a deal, because that's exactly what you do. You think you can trust them, but not really. So sorry, it's
Bummer.
a fascinating area.
Bummer.
More
But
scare,
I
more
think,
scare tactics.
well, I think one of the things, Russell, you kind of almost said this when you asked your question, you framed it up, and just to build on that, I mean, one of the earlier topics here was how do you get people, actually several of the questions and comments I asked or others asked is how do you get people's attention? I mean, one simple thing to do right now, and it may be cheap and easy, but if you want AI, you need to do blank is a pretty good selling point for getting blank sold in, right?
Yeah.
So you can't, we all the time talk about you can't really see the power of AI unless you do some, different things to your data. Okay, so we're talking about data and architecture around data and our digital nervous system and some of the key things that we really feel like we differentiate ourselves on in terms of Feld Group principles and things that we teach. We are saying, and we believe this, right? And so it's not just cheap marketing things, and it may seem that way, but it's not, is you have to pay more attention to your data if you want the power of AI. You have to pay more attention to cybersecurity if you want to safely have the power of AI, or, if you want to go further and say we have to implement zero trust as a strategy, or else AI will kill it. I don't know how far you want to go with that. And as we learn and as we grow and as different, maybe in different companies and context, I think riding the coattails of the feeling that executives have that they have to have an AI strategy and just making this a part of their AI strategy rather than a separate thing is probably a pretty good approach.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Okay, George, thank you so much. This has been excellent.
Thank you all.
Put up a lot of great thoughts. Appreciate it. I've appreciated your books and just our conversations over coffee and things like that. It's been great to meet you, and we hope to keep conversations going with you, but we really appreciate the time you've spent with us today.
Thank you all so much for having me. I appreciate all the conversation.
Yeah, thanks a lot.